Welcome to The Planted and the Poured, a space for real conversations about life as it is while we're becoming who we were created to be. Can I ask you a question? What do you do that's just for fun? Not necessarily because you're good at it, or it makes money, or it's productive, but what is something that you do just because you enjoy it? If it took you a minute to come up with an answer, or maybe you can't think of one, it's okay. You're not alone. As I was thinking about this episode, I was reminded of an episode of the show This Is Us. And if you're a fan of the show, it's season 3, episode 17, called R&B. And if you're not, that's okay. I'm going to paint you a picture and you can probably relate. There's a woman named Beth, and she tells her husband Randall that she's going to a conference for work, but instead she rents a hotel room nearby because she just wants one night when she can eat junk food and watch a show without being needed by other people. And she gets caught by her husband as she's buying some snacks for her evening in, and their discussion is really poignant and relatable to me. She's not trying to escape her family. She loves her husband and her kids, and she wasn't saying, I don't want this life. She just explained to him that she needed to remember that she was still a person outside of all of the ways that she cares for other people. She needed a night when she wasn't a wife, a mom, or a caretaker. She could just be Beth. And I think what makes this scene so powerful is that it shows that love and exhaustion can exist at the same time. And this scene really stuck with me because I see myself in Beth. I don't have kids yet, but I have a tendency to pour myself into the people and things that I love. And while that can be a beautiful thing, I also recognize that it can become dangerous if I forget that I am a person with needs and not just a provider. And so this episode really woke me up and started me on this path of constantly asking myself, how do I make sure I never lose who I am? Because I do hope to be a parent someday, and I want a life full of people who count on me. But I never want to wake up one day and realize that I don't know who I am or what brings me joy anymore. And as I was thinking about this, I realized that this isn't something that just all of a sudden happens when we become adults. I've noticed it in the middle school students that I teach. I see repeatedly that kids start letting go of things that they like because they're worried that those things are not cool anymore. I remember when I loved Britney Spears, I was obsessed with her. And then there came a point in my adolescence when it wasn't really cool to like her anymore. And I felt like I had to hide that I still listened to her music. And so I see in my students that they stop asking, do I like this? And start thinking about what will other people think of me if they know that I like this. And so not only do they quit or hide hobbies that they love because they don't fit the image of what they want to project, but they also stop trying new things because they are afraid of being bad at them in front of other people. I think we've made kids so afraid of failure because now they feel like they're on this public stage with social media and the access that they constantly have to their peers. And it made me wonder, maybe we never really grow out of that, but as adults, we just replace, is this cool with, is this productive? And so in my quest not to lose myself over the last few years, I've basically made it my mission that every time something sounds interesting and is within my means, I need to try it. So I've learned how to make sourdough. I've learned how to DJ. I took up knitting last year and went to the Sheep and Wool Festival. I learned photography. I continued to dance bachata, and I still make things with my Cricut. And there's something humbling about not being good at something And there's also something exciting about realizing that you are still worthy and capable of learning something new. And so, as adults, we're constantly asking ourselves, is this productive? Will this save me money? Can I justify this time? Is this useful? And so, I'll be honest, a lot of my hobbies have come from me asking if I could do something myself so that I didn't have to pay someone else. And then I just ended up enjoying it. And even my hobbies often end up helping other people. My love for photography has become useful when we have Embrace Grace showers and we do a maternity photo shoot with our moms. And my crafting has saved me so much money over the years. I even made my own wedding invitations and some for other people. And none of that is bad, but I also need to remind myself that I don't always have to justify why my hobbies are worth doing. So we're going to get into a little bit of psychology because this conversation is about playing. And we think of playing a lot of times as something that kids do because they don't have responsibilities. But it's actually critical for a child's brain development. And it doesn't end there. Adults need to play as well. And at some point, many of us stopped playing, not because we outgrew it, but because life got serious and we had responsibilities. And we started believing that things only have value if they're productive. But there are researchers who actually study play in adults because play does important things for our brains. So the most obvious one is that play helps your brain learn and think creatively. And so when we play, our brains enter this state of exploration where we're trying things and making connections and learning without the pressure of getting it right. Think about the difference between being told to solve a problem and being invited to explore. It's a whole different mindset. And play creates space for creativity and problem solving and innovation. This is why kids can spend an hour building something out of cardboard and somehow come up with ideas that adults would never think of because their brains aren't focused on being right, they are just exploring. Another benefit of play is that it lowers stress and helps regulate emotions. There's a psychologist named Dr. Barbara Fredrickson, and she's done research on positive emotions. And she found that experiences like joy and gratitude and curiosity don't just feel good in the moment. They can actually help broaden the way we think and build on our capacity to handle challenges. So, in other words, joy isn't just a reward that we get after life is easier. It can actually help us become more resilient when life is so hard. And so when we're constantly stuck in responsibility mode, our brains can get stuck in survival mode. Play is so important because it can help interrupt stress cycles. It increases these positive emotions that make us more resilient, and it can help us recover mentally from stress. So it doesn't mean you have to ignore your responsibilities or the hard things in life. Play just gives your brain a place to rest from carrying all of these things. Another important part of play is that it strengthens relationships. This can be especially important for new parents because research on social play shows that playing with your kids helps build connection. And it's not just with your kids, it could also be laughing with your spouse or baking with a friend or doing something silly together. Some of our deepest relationships aren't built during these perfectly planned conversations. Mostly they're built when we're laughing and being silly and creating lasting memories. The fourth thing that play does for us is that it reconnects us with parts of ourselves that we can sometimes lose as adults. I think one of the saddest things about adulthood is that we can sometimes forget the things that we actually enjoy. So to help you reconnect with this, if maybe you've spent some time away from it, you can ask yourself, what did you love doing before you worried about whether or not you were good at it? What did you do before everything had to become a side hustle? I'm definitely guilty of this. What is something that made you lose track of time when you were a kid? Play is something that can remind us that we are more than just what we accomplish. And I found in my experience that these are things that I cling to when life feels overwhelming. So, speaking of overwhelm, I don't think adults forget how to play, they just get overwhelmed. Because when we're exhausted, numbing or doing something very easy feels more feasible than something active. So, we scroll on our phones, we watch TV, and we do things that are less engaging because it just feels easier to numb out. And I get this. I also know that many of you listening are moms and you are in survival mode. So I don't want you to think that this is me pretending that you are going to magically have hours every week to take up pottery. But sometimes play can be very simple, like dancing in the kitchen with your kids, or reading a few pages of a book before bed, or trying a new recipe, or sitting outside with your coffee. In my years studying children and reading research, it's clear that play not only helps children develop, but it's also important for us as adults because it helps us remember who we are. There's a trend on social media about romanticizing your life, and a lot of people show it as buying fresh flowers or drinking coffee from a cute mug. And I agree with these things. But my opinion on romanticizing your life as an extension of play is that if I have to do ordinary things every single day, why can't I make them enjoyable? Life is not supposed to look like a movie, but it's also not mostly made up of vacations and promotions and milestones. Most of life is made up of Tuesday nights. And so if I'm going to cook dinner almost every night for the rest of my life, why shouldn't I learn to enjoy cooking? If I'm going to eat bread, why not learn how to make it? If I'm going to have people in my home, why not create a space that feels warm and welcoming? I think curiosity can be the thing that changes ordinary life. So instead of saying, oh, I have to cook dinner, curiosity says, I wonder if I can learn how to make this from scratch. And this is really how I grew to love cooking. Curiosity can make ordinary things interesting again because I don't want my life to be something I regularly need a vacation from. And it doesn't mean life isn't exhausting or that everybody can avoid burnout, but it means cultivating a life where joy is woven into the ordinary and not just for the occasional escapes. Because let's be honest, not everybody can afford a vacation. So what can we do with our regular life now to infuse more play, more enjoyment, and really reconnect with who we are so that we can be that much better for the people who depend on us? So let me ask you again, what do you do just because it brings you joy? If you can't think of an answer, it's not something to feel guilty about, but maybe it's an invitation to become curious again. You don't have to be an expert at something, but maybe you can challenge yourself to just become a beginner. Maybe you could bake something. Maybe you can borrow a book from the library. Maybe you can buy cheap yarn from the dollar store like I did. Maybe you could visit a museum or take pictures on your phone or learn a card trick or grow some herbs. Whatever that looks like for you, I want to encourage you to take time, even if it's just 10 minutes this week, to think about what do you enjoy? Because I think growing up doesn't mean we have to stop playing. It just means that we have to choose to do that on purpose. So I wish you all of the luck this week, finding something that brings you joy. And I appreciate you for listening today. If I said something that you thought was helpful, I would love for you to subscribe to the podcast and send it to someone you care about. This podcast is a conversation that we're creating together. And so if there's something that you love to share or talk about, you can plant a seed through the Seeds of Conversation Google form link in the show notes. I hope this met you right where you're at today, and I'm truly honored to be with you as we become who we were created to be. Until next time.